My stepdaughter slapped when she saw me at her graduation. She said, "Why do you want to disgrace me? Why are you here with your working gear?" This was after I paid for tuition throughout college and even single-handedly got her everything she needed for the graduation party. I left calmly without a word. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you how everything unfolded. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to Rob Veltman from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I've always worked with my hands. Calloused palms, dirt beneath the nails, boots scuffed from long days on concrete. I didn't grow up dreaming of laying down tile or hanging drywall, but somewhere between surviving and building a future, I found dignity in construction. I'm a contractor by trade, but more than that, I'm a man who believes in structure, both in buildings and in life. That's what drew me to Marie's mother, Sheila. She was soft where I was rough, calm where I was busy, and she had this little girl with wide, questioning eyes who didn't speak to me for the first 6 months I was in their lives. Her name was Kayla. She was 10 when we met, 14 when she first called me Dad. That moment, quiet and spontaneous, meant more to me than any paycheck I'd ever cashed. I never tried to replace her father. The man was barely in the picture, a ghost in a phone book. But I showed up, every school meeting, every birthday, every late-night stomachache. I paid attention. I remembered that she liked her sandwiches cut diagonally, not in halves. That she hated oranges, but loved orange juice. I paid for braces when she was 16, sat through her first heartbreak at 17, and when she got accepted into college, I was the one pacing in the backyard with the acceptance letter in hand like it was my name printed on it. I told her, "Baby girl, you focus on studying. I'll take care of the rest." And I did. Tuition, books, off-campus housing, the damn parking fees that seemed to double every semester, I covered it all. It wasn't easy. There were weeks I took on extra jobs, worked through Sundays, skipped vacations and birthdays of my own just to make sure that girl had what she needed. I didn't expect applause. I wasn't looking for sainthood. But I believed, maybe foolishly, that when someone sacrifices that much for you, there's a kind of unspoken gratitude that holds the relationship together. Turns out, I was wrong. As graduation neared, I went into overdrive. Kayla wanted a party, a big one. Classy, elegant, white and gold theme, she said. I didn't blink. I rented the hall, hired a caterer, paid a decorator who charged more than I make in a week. I didn't even argue. Just figured, she deserves a beautiful celebration. I wanted her to shine. I pictured myself there, watching her laugh with her friends, giving a toast maybe, quietly standing in the background like I always had, proud but invisible. That's how I've always loved, quietly, steadily, without a need to be seen. The morning of the ceremony, I woke up early and ironed my best pair of khakis. Not a suit. I don't own one. But a clean, button-down shirt, polished boots, even wore cologne Sheila had bought me years ago. I didn't think much of it. This was how I looked most days, presentable, respectful. Maybe not flashy, but solid. I drove to the university, heart thudding in my chest. I parked, found the building, and waited outside with the other families. Some were dressed in heels and ties, others in sundresses, and there I was, just me, hands in pockets, heart full. When I finally saw her walking toward me in that cap and gown, my eyes welled up before I could stop them. She looked beautiful, strong, like everything I'd worked for had materialized into this one moment. I smiled and stepped forward, arms open, ready to hug her. Then she slapped me, right there, in front of God and the parking lot. A stinging, open palm crack across my cheek that spun my head slightly to the side. I tasted metal in my mouth. Felt every eye in the vicinity snap toward us. But the only thing I heard, clearer than the slap, was her voice. Cold. Cutting. Cruel. Why do you want to disgrace me? Why are you here with your working gear? For a moment, I didn't even register the words. My mind just repeated her voice like a broken record. Disgrace me? My hands dropped. I stood still, blinking at her like maybe this was a joke. But her face was twisted in embarrassment. Like I was the problem. Like my presence, me, the man who paid her way, who bent backward for 4 damn years, was an eyesore. I didn't respond, didn't shout, didn't cry. I just turned around and walked back to my truck, slow and silent, like someone who'd just witnessed the final scene in a play they didn't know was ending. On the drive home, my fingers gripped the steering wheel so tight I thought it might snap. But I didn't curse. I didn't scream. I just sat there shaking, grieving. Not her success, but the version of her I thought I knew. By the time I pulled into my driveway, something had shifted inside me. A crack, then a collapse. Years of giving, loving, protecting, repaid with public humiliation. And not by a stranger, by the girl I'd raised. The girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during road trips. Who once made me a Father's Day card out of construction paper and glue. That girl was gone. And in her place stood a woman who saw me as less. As embarrassing. As disposable. But not anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the edge of my bed, boots still on, staring at the floor like it held answers I'd missed for the past 8 years. My phone buzzed with missed calls and text messages. From Sheila, from cousins, from some friends who had seen what happened. But I didn't answer. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to put words to what I felt because it wasn't just hurt. It was betrayal. A kind that clung to your ribs and made you question every choice you'd made in someone's name. I kept replaying it, her face twisted in disgust, her hand in the air, her voice like venom. Disgrace me. I'd built my life around making sure she never lacked, and somehow, I'd become her shame. The week leading up to graduation had been a blur of errands and invoices. Kayla wanted everything perfect, and I didn't hesitate. I'd built a second bathroom for a client just to cover the decorator's retainer. I took 2 side jobs, one finishing a basement, the other pouring concrete for a neighbor, to afford the party DJ and a custom cake with fondant roses and edible glitter. I even drove 2 towns over to pick up helium balloons shaped like 2025 because she didn't trust the local shop to get it right. She called the theme timeless elegance, and I was proud she had a vision, proud she cared about celebrating. I told her, "You deserve this," even though I was too tired to stand some nights. I remember laying down on a plywood stack at a job site one evening, closing my eyes just for a second and thinking, she better smile when she walks into that room. That smile will make all this worth it. But there had been signs. Little moments I ignored because I didn't want to believe they meant anything. The way she snapped at me when I mispronounced her friend's name. The time she corrected me for saying college instead of university in front of her professor. The increasing silence between us, like my presence was becoming more of a formality than a comfort. I chalked it up to stress. Finals, pressure, nerves. I never imagined it was shame. That I was the thing she was trying to keep in the shadows. I would have rather she spit in my face in private than humiliate me like that in front of a crowd I helped pay for. The party was still scheduled for the next day. That's what cut the deepest. She hadn't canceled it. She hadn't even texted me after the slap. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. Like I was the one who owed her space. I could have pulled out. Could have called the caterer and told them not to show. But I didn't. Maybe it was pride. Maybe I wanted to see if she'd come to her senses, acknowledge the harm she caused. I kept my distance and let it ride. The party was as grand as she wanted. Gold-rimmed glassware, white roses, a live saxophonist, and a photo backdrop with her name in metallic script. My name wasn't mentioned once. Not in the toast she gave. Not in the slideshow. Not in the thank you speech where she praised her mom and even her absentee father who always believed in her. I watched a video of it later. Someone had posted it online. There she was, smiling like a queen, holding a glass of champagne, thanking everyone but me. And the crowd cheered. None of them knew who had paid for every inch of that fantasy. When Sheila came home that night, she tried to talk. She didn't mean it, she said. She's young, and she's dealing with a lot of pressure. I looked at her, barely holding back the wave of disappointment rising in my chest. And I'm dealing with a lot of betrayal, I replied. But I didn't slap her in public and call her trash. Sheila sighed, looked down, and said, "You know she loves you." I shook my head. She loves what I give, not me. And I meant that. Deep in my bones, I knew the truth. Love is a verb, not just a word. And her actions screamed louder than any apology could whisper. I walked out of that room and sat on the porch, letting the night air cool the heat burning behind my eyes. That was when I made up my mind. This wasn't a phase. It wasn't a mistake. It was a mirror, and it showed me exactly where I stood in her life. I was her wallet, her errand runner, her quiet servant in boots and a name tag. And now that she was somebody, I was a relic of where she came from, someone she needed to hide. Well, fine. Let her hide. Let her pretend I never existed. The next morning, I called my banker, told them to cancel the automatic payments for her rent and car note. Then I called the lawyer. My will was straightforward. Everything I had built over a lifetime, my house, my savings, the land I bought for retirement, all of it was once going to her. Not anymore. I removed her name, left it blank. Maybe one day I'd donate it all to a trade school or give it to a kid who'd never slapped the hand that fed them. But it sure as hell wasn't going to her. When the paperwork was done, I picked up my phone and left one message. Calm. Direct. Final. Don't ever reach out to me again. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just ended it. Because some lines, once crossed, don't lead back home. There's a particular kind of silence that follows public humiliation. It doesn't sound like anything at all. It feels like pressure behind your eyes, heat crawling up your neck, the blood in your ears pounding loud enough to drown out common sense. When she slapped me in that parking lot, I didn't hear gasps or whispers. I heard that silence. Heavy. Total. Like the world had stopped to take notice of my disgrace, then politely looked away. Her hand had dropped almost as quickly as it rose, but the sting lingered, sharp, intimate, a mark not on my face but on something deeper. Pride? Dignity? I couldn't tell. All I knew was that I was standing in front of the girl I'd raised for nearly half her life, and she looked at me like I was dirt beneath her designer heels. I didn't say anything, not a word. I just looked at her, waiting for some flicker of remorse, some glimmer of shock. Oh God, what did I just do? But it never came. Her eyes were narrowed, her mouth pressed tight. She was furious I had shown up, furious that I had the audacity to stand there in my work clothes and muddy boots, like I hadn't just bled for her future. I stood there in my Sunday best, still modest by most standards, and she saw a laborer, in embarrassment. Not the man who kept her fridge full through undergrad. Not the one who sold his vintage toolbox to help pay her security deposit. No, just some man she used to know. The crowd parted around us. A couple of her friends giggled awkwardly and looked away. An usher hovered like he wanted to intervene, but didn't know who to address. A few parents whispered behind their programs. And I just stood there, humiliated, grounded to the asphalt like a man buried up to his neck. Everything in me wanted to ask why. But I didn't give her the satisfaction of my confusion. I nodded once, just enough to register the wound, and turned around without another glance. I walked out of that moment as if it were on fire behind me, as if nothing was salvageable anymore. I made it to my truck, sat behind the wheel, and stared at the dash for what must have been 20 minutes. My hands were shaking, not from rage, but from the overwhelming weight of clarity. This wasn't a teenage tantrum or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was who she'd become. This was what I'd raised. I thought back to every science fair, every doctor's appointment, every ride to school with gas I couldn't afford. I'd missed holidays, left job sites early, taken insults from clients just to be there for her. And this slap was my reward. Not the physical pain. That was nothing. It was the message behind it. The deep, cutting rejection of everything I had poured into her. My very existence was now something she felt ashamed of. I kept playing it back in my head, over and over. The slap. Her voice. That venom. Why do you want to disgrace me? That line split me wide open. Disgrace her? Me? After everything? I wasn't the one who should have been ashamed. I was the one who sacrificed. I was the one who showed up. And yet, in her eyes, I was a burden, a relic of her past she didn't want to carry into her bright, polished future. What hurt wasn't that she said it. It was that she meant it. By the time I drove off the campus, I felt a part of me harden in a way I didn't know was possible. Love doesn't just vanish, not real love. But it can recede. It can protect itself. It can say, no more. And that's what mine did. It pulled back into the safest corners of my heart and slammed the door. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just decided. A clean break. No announcements. No warnings. The kind of decision that doesn't need to be shouted because it speaks for itself. When I got home, I didn't even take off my boots. I walked straight to the living room and sat on the edge of the couch like I was waiting for a verdict. Sheila came in a few hours later, talking fast, already making excuses. She didn't mean it. She was just nervous. Her friend said something about your clothes. I put my hand up. Not forcefully. Just enough to signal that I didn't need the translation. Don't, I said. Don't stand there and try to dress it up. You saw what happened. You saw how she looked at me. Sheila's mouth opened, then closed. She nodded and walked away. I think she knew. Deep down, she knew this wasn't fixable. That night, I drafted the message. It took me less than 30 seconds. Just one line. Don't ever reach out to me again. I didn't reread it. I didn't soften it. I sent it and turned my phone off. I went outside, sat on the porch with a beer, and stared at the sky. The stars didn't offer any comfort. They just blinked, indifferent to my loss. In the quiet that followed, I thought about all the years I'd spent being her father. Not her stepfather, her father. No qualifications. No asterisks. I never loved her halfway. I never held back because she wasn't mine. I gave everything I had, and she took it without hesitation. Until the moment she didn't need it anymore. Until the moment she saw my hands, my boots, my clothes, and flinched. I used to think love meant sacrifice. That giving without keeping score was the highest form of care. But that night, sitting in the dark with a swollen cheek and an empty phone, I realized something else. Love without respect isn't love at all. It's dependency. It's convenience. And I was done being convenient. The morning after I sent the message, I woke to a strange kind of quiet. Not the peaceful kind that follows a good night's sleep. This was something heavier. Like grief had settled into the walls of the house. I didn't open my phone. I didn't make coffee. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the grain in the wood, letting the silence tell me what came next. It was funny. After years of juggling bills, managing jobs, and making sure Kayla never saw the cracks in the floor, I suddenly had nothing urgent to do. Nothing to prepare. Nothing to give. Just stillness. And under it, a slow-burning certainty. I needed to cut her off completely, not just financially, but emotionally, legally, spiritually. There would be no room left for her to crawl back into. Not after that slap. Not after that look. By noon, I was on the phone with my banker. The woman on the other end. Janine, a no-nonsense type who'd handled my accounts for years, sounded surprised when I told her I wanted to cancel the automatic transfers. The rent, the car note, the credit card, you want all of that stopped? She asked, her tone cautious. Yes, I said flatly. As of this moment, there was a pause. Is everything all right, Mr. Martin? I almost laughed at the question. I wanted to say, everything is finally clear, but I just said, it's personal. She confirmed the cancellations, and I thanked her, then hung up. It felt like cutting a rope, one that had been wrapped around my neck without me realizing it. I took a breath, and for the first time in days, it went all the way down to my lungs. But I wasn't done. Next came the lawyer. I'd updated my will just last year to reflect what I thought was a stable future. Kayla would inherit everything. My house, my land, my savings, even my truck. I didn't have much in terms of luxury, but what I owned was hard-earned, and I'd imagined her using it to build a life, to maybe one day pass it on to her own children. Now, I couldn't stomach the idea of her receiving a single nail from my toolbox. I scheduled an appointment and sat across from Mr. Callahan, a gray-haired man with a sharp pen and a soft voice. We're removing her from the will? He asked gently. Completely, I said. Leave it blank. I'll figure out later where it should go. He nodded and made the changes. I signed without hesitation. It was final. Cold, perhaps. But cold is better than burning. Back at home, I stared at the photo wall for a long time. There were years of moments up there, Kayla in pigtails on her first day of school, the two of us building a birdhouse when she was 12, her senior prom night, me standing beside her with a crooked tie and a grin too wide for my face. I took them down one by one. Not out of spite, but because I couldn't keep looking at someone who no longer saw me. Every photo felt like a broken promise. I boxed them, sealed the lid, and shoved it into the back of the hall closet. I told myself, this is closure. But it felt more like burial. Sheila came home that evening with red eyes and tight lips. She stood in the doorway, watching me sweep the living room like it was any other Tuesday. You really cut her off? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't look up. Yes. She came closer. She called me crying. Said she made a mistake. Said she panicked and didn't know how to fix it. I set the broom against the wall. That's not my concern anymore. She sat down slowly, as if the weight of what I'd done was heavier than she expected. She's your daughter, she said, not accusing, just stating. I shook my head. She was. I raised her. I loved her. But what she did, that wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. We didn't speak much after that. Sheila looked at me differently from then on. Like part of her admired the line I drew, and another part feared I might draw it with her someday too. But I wasn't cutting people off to be cruel. I was cutting them off to protect the part of me that still believed in loyalty, in love that doesn't humiliate you. I had given Kayla more than money. I had given her presence, sacrifice, and unconditional effort. And she had shown me what I was worth when I was no longer useful to her image. That's not a mistake. That's a lesson. 3 days passed before I heard from Kayla. Not directly, through Sheila. Apparently, she had been calling nonstop, leaving voicemails, texting long paragraphs, some apologizing, others blaming me. You embarrassed me, one read. You could have worn something decent. Another, I was under pressure. I didn't mean to slap you. I just snapped. Sheila tried to hand me the phone, but I pushed it back. She doesn't get access to me just because she's scared of the consequences. That was the thing about boundaries. They only meant something if you honored them when it hurt. Later that night, I sat in my workshop, the place where I built everything that mattered. Projects lined the shelves, birdhouses, picture frames, furniture for clients. My hands still worked. My eyes still saw straight. My heart? Still broken, but steadier now. I ran my fingers along the grain of a cedar plank and whispered, never again. Not to the wood, not to the air, but to myself. I wasn't angry anymore. I was resolute. That was the cut. And it was clean. It started with silence, then the flood. After days of ignoring her calls, her texts, her frantic attempts to patch over what she'd shattered, Kayla showed up. No warning. No preamble. Just the sound of tires on gravel and a frantic knock at the front door one sticky Saturday morning. I was in the garage, sanding down a reclaimed headboard I'd promised a client. I heard the knock but didn't move right away. Part of me hoped she'd leave. That maybe she'd read the message I'd sent for what it was. Final. But she didn't. The knocking turned into pounding. And when I stepped outside, there she was, makeup smudged, hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a hoodie I didn't recognize. Her face was a mess of tears and desperation. The same mouth that called me a disgrace now trembled like a child begging not to be left behind. Dad, please, she said before I could speak. That word. That damn word. It hit me square in the chest, made my breath hitch for a second. But I didn't answer. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, heart locked behind ribs that had spent a week hardening into stone. She took a step forward. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I was embarrassed and stupid and scared in it. I shouldn't have done that. I know I shouldn't have, but I didn't mean it like that. You know I didn't, right? Her voice cracked halfway through, and she crumbled to her knees like her legs gave out. It was a pitiful sight. One I'd have bent to once. One I'd have rushed to fix. But I didn't move. Sheila stood behind me, watching from the kitchen window. I didn't have to turn to know she wanted me to be merciful. But mercy without change is just enabling. And I'd enabled enough. Kayla sobbed into her hands, still kneeling like she was offering herself up for penance. I'll pay you back, she choked out. I'll take a second job. I'll sell the car. Just don't leave me like this. I blinked slowly, feeling a strange sort of detachment in my bones. Like I was watching a stranger beg for something I used to care about. You're not here because you love me, I finally said, voice low and steady. You're here because the money stopped. She looked up, wounded. That's not true. I swear it's not, Dad. I was just overwhelmed. You came looking like, you know how people can be. I didn't want them to judge me. I shook my head. So you judged me first. Her mouth opened, then shut. Her hands fell to her lap. I made a mistake, she whispered. 1 moment. 1 second. Doesn't that mean anything? I looked her square in the eyes. A mistake is forgetting my birthday. A mistake is missing a call. You didn't make a mistake. You made a statement. In front of the world. And now you want to erase it because the consequences finally showed up. She cried harder. The kind of cry that tries to crawl into your sympathy and pitch a tent. But I'd cried already. Alone. In silence. And it had dried into resolve. You taught me something that day, I said, stepping out onto the porch. You taught me exactly what I am to you. Disposable. Embarrassing. Replaceable. And that's not something I can forget. Or forgive. She crawled forward, hands clasped like a prayer. Please, just let me explain. Let me try to fix it. I'll do anything, I swear. I backed away. No, you'll do nothing. That's the difference now. You don't get to fix this. You don't get another try. I'm not a learning curve. You don't get to humiliate me and then test your way back into my life. She finally stood, wiping her face with her sleeve, and for a moment, something shifted in her expression. A flash of anger. A hint of defiance. So that's it, she spat. After everything I've been through, you just shut the door? Like I never meant anything? I took a slow breath. You did mean something. And that's why this hurts so damn much. But I won't keep a place in my life for someone who only respects me in private and rejects me in public. She shook her head, sniffling. You're being dramatic. I laughed. Just once, bitter and soft. And you're still deflecting. She stood there another minute, hoping maybe I'd waver. That maybe the old version of me, the one who broke his back and his bank for her, would surface. But that man had been buried the day she slapped him in front of his own sacrifice. When she realized I wasn't moving, wasn't yielding, she walked back to her car. No more begging. No more pleading. Just silence. And this time, it was mine. Sheila came out an hour later, sitting beside me on the porch without saying a word. She didn't try to console me. She knew better. Some wounds don't need bandages. They need boundaries. You all right? She asked quietly. I nodded, though I wasn't. Not entirely. She said she'd pay you back, Sheila murmured. I stared at the sky. She can keep her money. I'll keep my peace. That night, I didn't dream. I didn't toss and turn. I just laid there, awake but calm. I thought about all the things I'd done for her, how none of it had been for show. I never needed praise. I never asked for applause. All I wanted was respect. And when that proved too costly for her, I learned the most valuable lesson of all. Love that doesn't come with respect is not love worth keeping. She had begged. She had cried. But I had already decided. And for once, that decision didn't feel like punishment. It felt like self-respect. It's strange how quiet life becomes once you finally stop begging to be seen. Weeks passed since Kayla last showed up, and the air around the house felt different, thinner, lighter. Not because the grief had vanished, but because the weight of constantly justifying my love was gone. I could breathe without waiting for the next betrayal. I could sit on my porch with a cup of black coffee, feel the breeze, and not wonder whether I was being taken for granted somewhere. That stillness had a shape to it, almost sacred. It wasn't happiness, not exactly. But it was clarity. And after everything I had endured, the slap, the public disgrace, the begging that followed, it was enough. I didn't erase her entirely. I kept one photo of her tucked inside an old cigar box beneath my workshop bench. It was a small snapshot, Kayla at 13, smiling with frosting on her nose from a birthday cake I'd baked myself. That version of her, the girl before the disdain, before the shame, before she turned my love into something ugly, she still mattered. That child had been mine in every real way, but she no longer existed. And I refused to keep dragging the shell of her memory into my present. The woman she'd become? She had drawn the line. I just held her to it. Sheila didn't bring her up much anymore. At first, she tried to act like things might mend on their own, like time would eventually round off the sharp edges. But she saw me clearly now, saw how deep the cut went. After a few failed attempts to play peacemaker, she let the subject go. That was the hard part. Realizing I hadn't just created distance between myself and Kayla, but between myself and the woman I loved. Because once I set that boundary, it revealed things in our marriage too. All the years I'd overextended myself, thinking love meant endurance. I began to see how much of my giving had been taken for granted, by both of them. One night, as we sat at the kitchen table, Sheila broke the silence. You haven't been the same, she said, not accusatory, but honest. I looked up from my plate. Neither has she. Sheila nodded slowly. You think there's any hope left? I chewed for a moment, swallowed, then answered. For her? Maybe. But not with me. I'm not a bridge she gets to cross again. She sighed, and I could tell she wanted to argue, to plead one last time. But instead, she asked, and us. That question held weight. For a second, I didn't know if she was asking about our marriage or our loyalty. Maybe both. I reached across the table, took her hand gently, and said, "That depends on whether you respect where I drew the line." I think that's what people miss when they talk about forgiveness. They think it means erasing the past, folding your pain into a napkin, and pretending it never stained the table. But real forgiveness starts with acknowledgement. And Kayla hadn't done that. Not truly. She was sorry she got caught, sorry she lost access to the life I helped build. But not sorry for what she'd believed about me in the first place. And I couldn't rebuild anything on that kind of rot. My boundary wasn't a wall to punish her. It was a door I closed for good. Because love without accountability becomes poison. And I'd spent too long sipping that slow drip. Every so often, I'd get word through mutual friends or Sheila that Kayla was getting her life together. She'd taken a second job, moved in with a roommate, even sold the car. Good for her. I didn't wish her failure. I didn't want her miserable, but I also didn't want her near me. Growth is a beautiful thing, but only when it's not used as currency to buy your way back into someone's life. I wasn't a checkpoint she could circle back to once she figured things out. I had kept her safe for years. Now, I was keeping myself safe from her. One Sunday, I drove out to a plot of land I'd been eyeing for a while. Quiet place, about 30 minutes outside town, with enough space to build a cabin or maybe a simple one-bedroom. Just something mine. I stood in the middle of it, boots sinking slightly into the earth, and let the wind pass over my shoulders. I closed my eyes and imagined a life with no explaining, no apologizing, no proving my worth to people too blind to see it. Just peace. Just earned rest. And for the first time in years, I felt like that future was possible. Like I wasn't just surviving someone else's expectations anymore. Back home, I finally cleaned out the drawer where I used to keep Kayla's spare keys, mail, and old documents. It had become a kind of shrine to my enabling, a space where I kept making room for someone who'd shown they didn't want me. I tossed most of it, shredded the paperwork, burned the copies. I even threw out the spare key. There was something deeply final about it. A closing ceremony, not out of anger, but release. I whispered, "Be well," as I dropped it all into the bin. Not because she'd hear it, but because I needed to say it to let go. Some people say blood is thicker than water. I say respect is thicker than both. Love without it is a ship with no sail, a promise with no weight. I loved Kayla. God knows I did. But I loved myself too. And after everything, that had to be enough. She made her choice when she raised her hand and tried to cut me down in front of the world. I made mine when I didn't let her back in. And I would stand by that choice every damn day. If this story moved you, made you reflect, or reminded you of your own boundaries, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful, real-life narratives. Your support helps us bring these voices and experiences to light. So join the conversation in the comments and let us know where you draw the line. See you soon in the next story.